World War II was a scary and a bloody battle for both sides of the war. But after 6 long and bloody years, the Allies, consisting of Britain, America, France, and Italy for a little bit, and the Soviet Union and Australia, and more, won. There are a bunch of key moments, battles, places, and discussions that helped the Allies win World War II, but these are the top 5 most important parts to the Allies winning World War II against the Axis powers. At number 5 in my list, I have the Battle of Okinawa. Okinawa is number 5 in my list because it was Japan's last fight against the US and Britain on land and basically anywhere. Japan used everything they had knowing it could be their last fight in this war. It was the last island the US deemed important to get in the Pacific Ocean to somehow defeat the Japanese. Japan used everything, all of their military equipment, all their tanks, all their air raid tags, all their air force, all their navy, everything. And they used almost over 1,000 kamikaze planes just to try and defeat the Americans, but that didn't even work out very well. This also marked that the USA now had 2 islands in bombing range of Japan, which the US would use and start bombing Japan's capital, Tokyo, multiple times a day, every day of the week, no stop. They would go airplane, and then the airplane would bomb, they would come back, get another bomb, and then they would keep going, until eventually they dropped the A-bomb on Japan. As you can see, Okinawa, the US invaded 3 different spots, 2 about right next to each other in 2 waves. There's like 4 little pieces that break up in the East China Sea, and then in the bay, they had 1 little wave come in, trying to attack on all cylinders, and their idea was they were just going to keep moving up and up until they finally took the entire island. It was Japan, again, it was Japan's last fight, so they lost all of their soldiers, almost all of them. There was almost none prisoner of war because in Japanese culture it was deemed less important to not die in battle. So there would be a bunch of Japanese soldiers at the brink of death still coming at America. So Japan ran out of bullets, and so they started coming with their guns with little knives on it, charging at the Americans. So it was like a death for both sides, which accumulated to a huge death toll for both sides of the battle. And it was one of the bloodiest battles of World War II. And that is why the Battle of Okinawa is number 5. So number 4 on my list, I have the Battle of Stalingrad. I have Stalingrad at number 4 because it helped push the Nazis out of Russia, and the Red Army continued to push the Nazis farther back afterwards. Both the Soviet Union and the Nazis suffered massive losses in this battle. The Russians went through almost every single soldier they had and forced civilians to rush full speed at the Nazis with pots and pans and rocks and anything they had. But this ended up working and forced the Nazis to retreat. In total, the death count for each side was there's 2 million soldiers in battle, 800,000 Axis power casualties, 1.1 million Red Army casualties, and 40,000 civilian deaths. Total casualties 1.9 million. This took place in Stalingrad in Russia. This was a huge battle for the Soviets to not lose because it's named after their leader. If they lost this battle, it would take all nationalism out of Russia. But that's why the civilians had to start charging at the Nazis. But in the beginning, the Red Army soldiers were put into pairs and given 1 gun per pair and 5 bullets each. And they're told to charge right at the Nazis until they couldn't anymore, and then they would die. And so the person behind them would pick up their gun and just start going right where the other person had left off. But they couldn't retreat, because if they were to retreat, they would get shot by their own generals that were forced to by Stalin, that wanted them to not retreat. And if they were to retreat and the generals did not shoot them, Stalin would take the generals' families and start shooting them and killing them in a way to show them that Stalin is way more powerful than you are, and you have to follow Stalin with everything, to never disobey Stalin. It pushed the Nazis back to Central Europe, which was a great thing for the war, but Stalingrad was just a very, very bloody battle and shouldn't have been this bloody. Also, the average temperature was negative 22 degrees in winter, which also gave the Russians a huge advantage because they called in troops from Serbia, which are very much used to this type of weather. It is freezing cold in Serbia. So that gave the Russians, who are very used to this type of weather, a great advantage over the Nazis, who are not so used to this weather. So that is why I have the Battle of Stalingrad at number 4 on my list. So at number 3 on my list, I have the Italian campaign, aka the Up the Boot campaign. So this one's number 3 in my list because it's the invasion of Italy, where America went up through Italy, aka the boot, while fighting heavy Italian-German forces against them. Allied forces forced Italy to surrender, and the first major dictator first surrendered, aka Benito Mussolini. Now they just had to focus on Adolf Hitler and Hideki Tojo. It also weakened the Nazis very much. Over 32,000 American troops died in this campaign. This campaign started in 1943 and ran all the way till 1945. How America and the Allied forces did it is they used their earlier strategies from the African campaign and using the territory that they liberated and helped jump up to Italy, kind of into the little islands like Sicily and all those. And then they took those islands first, and then after they got those islands, they jumped up into Italy and went up through the boot. And eventually they liberated Italy, and then later Italy would join the Allies and help fight against the dictators in Tojo and Adolf Hitler. This would mark that the Italian people did not like it. They did not like Mussolini. They were cheering for America as they came through Italy. And the Italian citizens actually were the ones that killed Benito Mussolini and his wife. It was not the Americans. So, yeah, that's why I have the Up the Boot campaign, aka the Italian Liberation, or the Italian campaign, at my number 3. Alright, and number 2, I have the D-Day invasion. So, the U.S. troops stormed the beaches of Normandy to fight the Nazis for the first time in Europe. Every time the Allies would get off the boat, they would get mowed down by the Nazi machine guns waiting at the top of mountains where the Nazis had built bunkers. But before the attack, the USA tricked the Nazis by landing at the beaches of Normandy, because the Nazis thought they were going to land where there was a little sliver between Britain and France. So the USA actually hired toy companies, to build them inflatables that blew up and looked like tanks. So they would trick the Nazis flying over to be spy planes and think that they were going to invade over there. I have this at number 2 because it's the first time that the US, the United Kingdom, Canada, Norway, and France all attacked Germany at the same time. And it marked that France was finally free. After this battle, the US would continue to move about France and finally free Paris. And then France would join back with the Allies. There's 156,000 Allied troops, and 10,000 Allied troops died, and only 4,000 to 9,000 Axis power troops died. This is one of the most known battles of World War II because of how significant it is in how World War II played out, because if the U.S. would have lost this war, it would have severely weakened all of the allies, and Germany probably would have had enough time to go up in through Britain and finally take London in Britain, and they would have completed their European invasion besides Switzerland. But Switzerland was basically a part of the Nazis. So that is why I have the D-Day invasion at number 2. Alright, so I put in an honorable mention, Guadalcanal. I put this one as an honorable mention because this was a battle on land, air, and sea. It was like a mini D-Day for Australia, the USA, and Britain, who all fought in this battle every time they would get off the boat. Because just like the Nazis, Japan had built up all their military at Guadalcanal, getting all their machine guns ready for the Allies to invade. This battle ended up being the first land defeat for the Japanese in the entire war. The Americans lost 14,000, the Japanese lost 24,000. This happened between 1942, August, and February 1943. The Allies' first defeat in the island hopping campaign, marking that the USA was here and they were ready to fight. Something to know about it is there was like a Star Wars battle almost, where they were battling in the land, sea, and on the ground in Guadalcanal. The Japanese would keep striking with their kamikaze planes, which are planes with missiles on the front. That was like a suicide mission every time they wanted to use one, where a pilot would fly headfirst into a ship and destroy the ship, hopefully, while taking out a lot. This severely weakened the U.S. Navy, but also severely weakened the Japanese Air Force. But the Japanese decided this worked too well for them not to keep making it, so they just kept making them. So Guadalcanal is my honorable mention for this. And at number 1, I have the Battle of Iwo Jima. This battle is number 1 for me because it was the bloodiest battle in the Pacific. Japan refused to surrender to the Allies because, like I said before, Japanese culture believed that it was good to die in battle than to become a prisoner of war. This battle also marked the closest the USA has came to Japan, and it was finally close enough for them to start bombing them. Once the island was taken, the Americans started to continuously bomb Tokyo, the capital of Japan. The Japanese wouldn't surrender until the USA dropped the A-bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, ending World War II. Okinawa and Iwo Jima were the last battles of World War II. Battle of Iwo Jima also was like a mini D-Day, but it basically destroyed the island for a while. But it was the first major battle in which the U.S. Marine Corps and the Navy landed and captured Iwo Jima from Japan during World War II. So their idea was that they were going to build an airfield to start sending out their Air Force to bomb Japan multiple times, which ended up working for a little bit because there's no more battles. How the U.S. invaded is they came from 3 different ends. One end on the west, one end on the east, and one in the south. And so they kept pushing the Japanese back, where taking out lines that they had built up throughout everywhere on the island. Also, civilians also started to attack the American and Allies during this battle. Also, one of the most famous pictures from World War II, the flag raising, which you can see up at the top, is where the U.S. finally conquers the island and holds up the flag for all to see. And that is why I have the Battle of Iwo Jima as my #1 battle of World War II.